Everybody, it's Felisa. Let me make sure that my microphone. I know me and my audio challenges. If anybody can recommend a good microphone, I would really appreciate it. So this is going to be my first entry into Soulful Saturdays, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing it every week. This is going to be a story time, just so you know, FYI. And so I may need to break it up so that the video is not so long, because some of the information that I like to share, you know, gets pretty detailed. And while I don't really want to get too far into the weeds, I don't want to eliminate certain portions of the story that is, I think, helpful and germane to the overall experience. So I may break this up. I'm not sure. It depends on how long the video goes. I don't want y'all to be like, girl, wrap this up. So we'll just play it by ear and see what happens. Anyway, this is going to be a story time. This is going to be an entry into Soulful Saturdays, and this is going to be on the topic of intuition. Now, I want to make sure that I say this up front. I identify as a Christian, but I also am very open-minded, and I'm very aware of different belief systems, and I think that that you can glean all types of wisdom and all types of information from various sources. So because of that, I'm using the term intuition very loosely. Interpret it as you will. You know, if you're Christian, it's the voice of God. If you are Buddhist, you know, it's enlightenment within yourself, whatever it is. I just don't want to have to feel like I'm alienating anyone. And intuition is probably a word that most people understand when they hear it. So this story begins when I was 17 and I was in my final year of high school. I was going to be 18 that May. And I had been dating a guy for about 2 years since my sophomore year. He was 2 years older than I was. And so I got a call one day. He had been out of school for 2 years by the time I got to be a senior. And so I got to get a call one day from him. And, you know, he very politely informs me that he had enlisted in the Air Force. Okay, fine. So in my head, I'm thinking I'm about to be a military wife, you know, blah, 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 because this was my guy. This was like my soulmate, because back then I believed in that kind of thing. And we were going to be together forever and ever. I mean, have copious amounts of children. Well, not really, because I just wanted the one child. Anyway, we was going to have that one baby. We was going to be satisfied and very happy that we did that. Well, he called me, and in addition to telling me that he enlisted in the service, he also called me to tell me that he thought that it was best that we broke up. Baby, when I tell y'all I was devastated, like I cried. My mother thought I was crazy. So finally, after about a couple of weeks, my best girlfriend, called me and was like, "What you doing?" She was like, "Yeah, we're not going to continue to cry over that. Let me censor myself in the internet over that person." She was like, "You're coming out. We've been invited to this performance. Ms. Middleton, who was our Spanish teacher at that time, had invited us out to this African dance performance, Latin fused African dance, and she was like, "I'm coming to get you. We're going." So that's exactly what she did, and I wound up going, and I actually wound up having a great time. The performance had an intermission, and so during the intermission, I see this guy in a few rows ahead of me get up and walk out. And I remember saying to my girlfriend, like, "That's mine. Listen to me. Y'all better be careful about what y'all name and claim, what y'all decide belongs to you, because you just might get it." Anyway, so I go downstairs in the intermission, and the crazy thing is that I was so reserved and I was so shy back then. Even now, like I told y'all, I don't shoot my shot. Maybe that's why, child. But I'm not somebody that just goes up and has conversation. I'm like really introverted when it comes to stuff like that, believe it or not. I don't strike up just random conversation unless I'm extremely comfortable. But it was something about him, and I thought, you know, it's now or never. So I go over, I talk to him, use the most cliche line ever, like, "Do I know you from somewhere?" He says, "Yeah." "Yes, you do look familiar." Turns out we actually had gone to not one but two high schools at the same time. So it's possible that we had in fact seen each other. So anyway, he suggested that we exchange numbers, and the rest, as they say, is history. We dated pretty hot and heavy for that year. I graduated that May. And then the next year, right before I conceived our son, I had this dream. Now, I want to make sure that I'm saying for the record that this relationship was not peaches and cream. Like my ex-husband is a narcissist, and I don't know how else to put that. Like his whole attitude and his whole demeanor and the way that he treated me was just abhorrent. And because he didn't really have very little insight into his behavior and how he affected me, we very quickly got into this cycle of, he would do certain things and he would come and he would apologize. And I, for my part, had terrible, non-existent self-esteem, not even low self-esteem. And I thought that this was the stuff that relationships are made of, right? Like, stuff happens, guy comes and apologizes, and you make every effort to make it work. And so because of that, like, I quickly slipped into this cycle with him of, you do this, hurt me, I cry, he come back after about a week or so, apologize. This was literally the way that our marriage went for years. But this was kind of like the precursor during our dating years. Anyway, so before I conceived our son, I remember that I had this dream. And that's where the topic of intuition comes in case you're wondering. I had to give like a little context. Anyway, so I had this dream one night. And in this dream, I was in this huge room. It was like almost like a airplane hangar. And the room was completely white. It was nothing was in it. Like, it was devoid of anything except for me. And so I'm kind of like looking around this room. And next thing you know, like, I look over and I realize that I'm standing next to this snake. Not just any old snake. This snake literally was ginormous. Like, I'm looking at the base of this snake, and then, like, I remember trying to see up to the top because it went from floor to ceiling. And then, like, I literally had to, like, move back just to try and see the top of it, and I couldn't. And so as I'm, like, staring up, like, what on earth? This snake pivots, turns its head, and is now looking directly down at me. So I'm looking up at it. It's looking down at me. And at some point, I recognized that the snake had a human face. Not only did the snake have a human face, the snake's face was the face of my boyfriend at that time. And so I remember, like, baffled in this dream, like, looking like, what the hell? So as I'm looking, this thing starts to coil itself around my body. So it starts at my feet. So I'm standing, I'm looking, and it starts to coil itself around my body. By the time I was aware that that's what it was doing, like, it was up to my chest. And so now I recognize that this is like a boa constrictor, and it's squeezing, and I have no breath whatsoever. So I'm literally like gasping for air. So all I could think of in that moment in this dream was to pray. So I start praying, and it comes out like a whisper. Couldn't get my words out, but I'm still, just in prayer. So, as I'm praying and even whispering, I recognize that it's feeling like it's getting looser, that the constraints are not as tight as it was. And so the more that I prayed, the looser that it became. And so the more breath I was able to get. And so I was able to now speak louder, and to the point where over time I'm yelling, like literally yelling. So finally it loosens its grip. Not only loosens its grip, but starts to shrink. And so it shrank down enough for me to step on it, and I woke up. Literally, y'all, like, when I woke up, I was like, what in the world? Now, I know that y'all heard that, and y'all are very clear on this process. Please give 17-year-old stupid me a pass. I sincerely was perplexed by that dream. I'm thinking that this was like the first time that I'd had a real, like, in-depth, insightful, what some may call a prophetic dream. I didn't know what to do with that information. I called my pastor, the pastor that actually wound up marrying us. He was of no help. I told his mama. I told my mama. And they were like, girl, that's something. And please be assured that I don't blame them. Like, we literally were all acting like we did not know what this meant. So I carried on with the relationship. And, you know, I wound up conceiving our son, and the rest, as they say, is history. And it wasn't until many, 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 many years later, and I had situations like that throughout the relationship, that were insightful, but not necessarily as vivid as that. And I guess the Lord was like, well, girl, you in it now. No sense of me giving you, I told you, fool. Until fast forward, probably our 11th year. By this time, we were 4 children in, and I had completely had it. So this one particular time, we decided that we were going to make a last-ditch effort to save our marriage. At least that's the way that I was perceiving it. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know what he thought. But, you know, I literally was checked out this relationship. Nope. But because I was so heavily involved in the church, and because I really did believe God, at that time, I didn't want to be the one to be like, yeah, no, and act as though I didn't believe that God could repair my marriage and save it. So I decided that I was just going to, you know, continue as I was. You know, I was going to pray about it. I was just going to wait and see. So it's somehow between the two of us, we decided that we were going to go to Florida, have this family vacation. And so that's what we did. We piled all the kids into the minivan at that time, took a drive down to Florida. We argued all the way down south. It was ridiculous. It was miserable. The children had a wonderful time. I don't even know if they noticed. Our dysfunction was so normal to them, and so they probably was like, oh, you know, mom and dad are communicating again. It was terrible. So we get down there, still was arguing, got back, still was arguing. So much so until by the time we got back, like, I literally was giving him the silent treatment despite my video on the silent treatment. I told y'all I was not above using it back then. So we get home, and I'm in the bed, and the way that I always have, the way that my intuition always works, or the way that I perceive things, is usually in pictures. It's not that I can't hear a voice, and you'll hear that in a few minutes, but typically I don't. So before we left, I had taken all of my, if you hear clumping, that's my doggy. I don't know what she's doing. I've taken all of my jewelry off and put it in an envelope and put it in my top drawer, primarily because A, I didn't want to travel with it, and B, I had read on the news that Florida at that time was having issues with tourists being targeted because they had out of state license plates and being robbed. And so I was like, shoot, we were coming down there with a complete minivan looking all like a family, and just basically we should have just painted the words on the side, victim here. That's the way that I felt, and I was like, I'm not carrying nothing. So I took off everything that I owned that was of value, which wasn't a whole lot, put it in this envelope, put it in my drawer, and off we went. When we got back, because we had been arguing so much, I didn't even think about that crap until one night I was in the bed. And so in my head, I see a picture of the envelope. I'm like, where's my stuff? Because I didn't check for it before we came back. And so, or when we came back, I wasn't checking for it. And so when I did get up to go look for it, it wasn't there. And so I quickly was like, well, where is it? So I'm tearing up the room. I can't find it. I almost killed the children because I'm like, where is my stuff? Why wouldn't you to blah, 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 blah. And it was like, Mom, I didn't take it. We didn't do anything. Yada, yada, yada. So I'm like trying to beat the truth out of them. So one day I'm in the kitchen and I'm just baffled about where my stuff is. So I'm in the kitchen, and the way that the house was set up at that time was that there was a breakfast nook on one side with the dinette and the microwave, and then on the other side there was the refrigerator, stove, and sink, and there was a wall that separated it, like a short wall, so you could kind of walk around, but you couldn't see from one side to the other. So I knew he was over at the microwave, but I couldn't see him. So I'm in the refrigerator, like head all in the refrigerator, and I hear this voice say, he took your jewelry. So just as I'm standing up, because I literally heard this voice. He's coming around the corner and I'm looking him dead in his face and I'm like, you took my jewelry? And he was like, no, why would you say that? Why would you say that? So I swear I hear this voice say, he pawned it. And I said, you pawned my jewelry. It was the most bizarre. As quick as I was getting this information, it was coming out my mouth. And so he was like, pawned it? Why would I pawn it and have you kill me? No, babe, it's around here somewhere. We'll find it. We'll find it. So I'm looking at him and I'm just stunned because I don't even know what just happened. So a couple of days go by. I'm still looking for it. I can't find it. And so he was out. And so I basically was in the room one day and I said, okay, Lord, if that was you and he pawned my jewelry, where are the slips? Y'all, I'm trying to tell you, as soon as that came out my mouth, I heard a voice that said he has them on him. No sooner did I hear that was he walking up the stairs. So he was a creature of habit back at during that time. We had like a huge chair in our bedroom that he would normally come in, take his clothes off, put his clothes in the chair, and then he would, go have a snack, go watch TV, or go in the office. This particular night, he didn't come in the bedroom at all. He went directly to the office, was in on the computer for doing, I don't know what. And then so after that, he came in the room and he just got in the bed. So I realized he had taken his clothes off in the office. So I get up after he goes to sleep. I go in the office. I look in his pants pocket. Sure enough, there were the pawn slips. So I go and I wake him up like, I don't know where you're going, but you got to get up out of here. And that is how we separated. Now, I'm telling you all of that because you can see from start to finish how when you don't listen to your intuition and when you do listen to your intuition, the outcomes are very different. I could have saved myself a whole lot of stress and strain and problems and anxiety had I just listened, had I just paid attention to the warning signs. And there are so many of us that are out there that do that. We rationalize, we justify, we come up with alternate facts about why something can and cannot be, instead of really listening to what that gut is saying. We've allowed people to talk us out of our intuition too by telling us that we're crazy and we don't know what we know. I'm telling y'all, I don't know how I know. I just know what I know. I might not be able to put it all together, but I know what I know. And it doesn't always happen in every situation or circumstances. We have to develop that gift. It is absolutely a gift, and it is given to you for a reason. Stop ignoring it. Every single time I have ignored my gut, I have definitely regretted it. Always regretted it. And always had a harder time than if I had just effing paid attention. It's ridiculous when that happens, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. I believe strongly that you can avoid certain situations and certain detriments if you just pay attention. But the number one reason why we don't is because we don't want to. We really don't. Even though I give myself my 17-year-old self a pass, the reality is that I didn't want to let that man go. I thought that he was going to be the only person that was ever going to love me. I with the feelings that I felt for him, I thought was like the end all be all. I thought that the sacrifice was going to be worth it. I thought this is what you do when you are in love with someone. And of course, 50-year-old me has a completely different outlook, honey, than 17-year-old me. As a matter of fact, I just want to choke 17-year-old me because she was stupid, just dumb for no reason. But that's what comes with life experiences, and that's what comes with understanding and cultivating your gifts. Even now, though, even in my last relationship, I had situations where I knew my gut was like, and I ignored it. And it in the end, I paid for that. Not as severely, but it definitely was an eye-opener. So much so until I'm unwilling to ignore that in any future situation. The minute that I feel like it's off, I definitely have a time where I meditate and I reflect on that. But if I feel like it's off, if I feel like, there's any kind of bells going on, if there's any kind of whistles, there's any kind of whatever, I need to address that. I really do. And I have to make sure that I'm not doing something with my eyes wide open, or eyes wide shut, I should say. What situations have you been in where you've ignored your intuition, where you've ignored your gut, where you've decided that that's not really what it is, and you have paid for it dearly? Some things we can't afford to pay. We really, really can't. And so that's the whole reason for doing this particular vlog. Like, I'm not out to disparage anyone. I'm sure that if you call my ex-husband, he got all kinds of alternative perspectives. It is what it is. I can only give you mine. And it's certainly not to, embarrass or disparage him or malign him. It is what it is. And I'm entitled to my opinion and my thought process just like he is. But I will say this. It's my hope and my desire that by even just sharing that little bit, that somebody out there will begin to trust themselves and will get themselves out of a situation that's only going to wind up hurting them in the end. Because some days we're just our own worst enemies. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing worse in the world than loving somebody more than you love yourself. We are not sacrifices, and we ain't Jesus' child. Our blood don't save nobody. Nobody. So stop being a martyr for no reason at all. It's ridiculous. I'm Felisa. I hope that you enjoyed this little story time. I am almost at 22 minutes, so I'm going to cut it off and pick up on the next one. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. And I will talk to y'all later on. Bye.